Hello and welcome to this taste challenge, a nighttime taste challenge, 5:41 a.m. Central Daylight Time. I have two 40% alcohol Canadian blended whiskeys. This is Canadian Peak. Now, the bottle design has changed over the years. When this was introduced in 1961, it had a traditional bottle design. And then they went to a long stem bottle, even longer stem than this one. Then now this current version. I bought this about 3 years ago at a place called Hocus Pocus Liquors in Prairie View, Louisiana. Not Prairie View, that's in Texas, sorry. Prairieville, Louisiana. Prairie View is in Texas. So there's the Canadian Peak in the background. Nice bottle design. It's clear. It'd be better if it was brown glass, but they did it like that so you see the mountains in the background. But it is a real brand. It's not a private label brand. And it, like I said, has been on the market since 1961. Not exactly a well-known brand. I've never seen it in my town. A blend of premium Canadian whiskeys mellowed in white oak casks to achieve an exceptional flavor and smoothness. And they spell flavor in the USA way, not the Commonwealth of Nations way that they would spell it in Canada, actually. Although they spell whiskey in the Canadian British Commonwealth manner, so it's kind of funny. They got it one way and then the other way. All right, but people writing this obviously are in Kentucky. Canadian Peak embodies, I got to read this because there's no website listening. Canadian Peak embodies the adventurous spirit of the Canadian Rockies with its bold, rich creaminess and spicy finish. This exemplary Canadian is expertly aged, no age statement though, in select oak barrels, resulting in a perfectly balanced, mellow whiskey that's as worthy of exploration as Canada's great outdoors. Okay. Bottled by County Line Distillers in Kentucky. All right. Real wooden cap, real cork. So the price, I think this runs around $21, something like that. And it's one of those, they're trying to put it priced a couple of dollars less than Crown Royal to entice people to buy this as an alternative to Crown Royal. And when I was at that liquor store, the guy was telling the customer, you could try this. This is a really good alternative to Crown Royal. And the guy wasn't interested, because people latch on to these brands and they're never going to try something new. It's just not going to happen. It's the same bottle design as the new Seagram's Apple and the Seagram's VO Black. So if you see Seagram's VO Apple and the Seagram's VO Black, same bottle. Okay, same price, basically. Imported, makes sense. Potter's Crown Canadian whiskey. A rare blend of Canadian whiskey. Distilled and blended in Canada, which is the law. So all Canadian whiskey is distilled and blended in Canada and aged there, but it can be bottled in the United States. Age a minimum of 36 months. And this is bottled in the United States also, just like the other one in California by Frank-Lin Distillers. All right, there you go. So I paid $14.99 for this. It might have been $13.99, but I'm thinking it's $14.99. It was. I'm confused. I don't know. It was either $13.99 or $14.99. Either way, it was cheap. Okay. That was hard to get off. Real cork, not rubber or chunks of cork held together with some adhesive, some resin. I know it's kind of moldy on the bottom of the wood. I see that. There's real cork. Okay. Gotta make sure I don't spill it. Kind of an odd thing to pour. This bottle's kind of funny. Pull out the comic book box and set it there as a display. All right. Wesley Estheimer says, neat looking bottle. Is it glass? Yes, it is glass. Clear glass. This is plastic, sorry. That's the only format I saw. I prefer glass, but if it's plastic and that's all I can get, I'm not going to stress over it. All right. So no website to show for this one. I mean, for this one, the Canadian Peak. I watched your review of the original Southern Comfort. I found it strange at first, however, it's grown on me a bit. Talking about the review or the product? I guess you mean the product. Although I guess some of my reviews are strange, maybe. Okay. Frank-Lin. As soon as I saw that, I knew that had to be two people's names put together, and it is Mr. and Mrs. Lin Lee. They call her Lin. Husband and wife team that took over this distillery in 1966. Yeah, it was established in 1930, but they took it over in 66 and they own it. Well, their children own it. They passed away because they were very old. He served in the U.S. He didn't actually serve in the U.S. Military. From what I was reading, he worked for the military in Pearl Harbor after the attack because he had some technical skill that they needed. And then he stayed in Hawaii. I'll show you the people. He stayed in Hawaii homepage. And there's the company. There's all right. So he stayed in Hawaii after the war and he worked for Dole Company. Became a big executive there, like a scientific executive, you understand? And then he retired pretty young and he made enough money to move to the United States. And him and his wife started this, he and his wife started this company. All right. It says they enlisted their sons to join the endeavor. Over the years, the sons have carved out industry expertise. Today, Vince Maestri is the president and CEO of the company. All right. Frank-Lin Distillers Products Limited. See, they're not actually a distiller. They just handle products. See that warehouse there? Whoops. I don't know what it was going to click. They built this new building a few years ago. I think they still have the old building, but they need a new one. And they just really source products. We call it in England or Scotland. In Scotland, they would call it an India. But they do a lot of bottling, as you can see, and they blend stuff there too. So there you go. But all their spirits come from some other companies, including one of their companies in Mexico. They own a big tequila distillery in Mexico called Maestri, because Frank and Lynn Maestri, their children did Maestri Distilling in Mexico, and they have their own website. And I would assume all this tequila that they're listing would, common sense tell you, would come from their own distillery. Wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to, the Southern Comfort was weird at first. The review was fine. Okay, thank you. Wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to own a tequila distillery and then buy tequila from somebody else, right? Okay. It's like if you have Corbel brandy aged in Tennessee whiskey barrels. I mean, anybody could figure that out. Corbel is owned by Brown-Forman, who owns Jack Daniels. So you know what Tennessee whiskey they're using, whose barrels they're using. You're not going to buy somebody else's barrels when you own thousands of barrels at your own distillery in Tennessee, right? Okay. So the appearance, they're about the same. Amber gold. I would say so, yes, amber gold. So at least I don't have to close my eyes. Doctor, my eyes. All right. My eyes are bad for seeing far away. Like if I took them off, I could see, but I couldn't read what you're writing. It's so blurry. And now my friend Davis, the opposite. So when we do beer reviews together or whiskey reviews, it's like all disjointed because he's got to find his reading glasses to read the bottle, you know. And I'm sitting there saying, "Hand me the bottle. I'll look at it. I can read it. I don't need glasses." And then if he's showing me something over there, like look over there on that, see over there on that shelf, and I don't have my glasses on. I'm like, what? Okay, so ha ha ha. Here we go. I got it wrong the first time in the series. I know I got these pins in my hair to hold my hair back. It's getting long and falls in my face, you see. But I didn't feel like putting anything in it to go back. I'm going to be a hipster. See, pretty soon I'll tie it in a knot in the back like a hipster, you know. And I got to get some flannel shirts and start drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon more often. And get an ear hole? No, I'm not that hip. All right. And tattoos? I'm not that hip. I guess I'll be a quasi hipster. No, I mean, okay. Yeah, smell like regular old whiskey, you know, just sweet corn, rye, the spice, the rye spice, maybe a little malted barley. Yeah, it's smells typical. Off aromas, off nose, nah. This one has less of an aroma. Now I can't remember. Does this one have a more prominent aroma? Does this one have a more prominent aroma? I don't know. I'm thinking since the Canadian Peak is aged longer, you would think because I got no age statement, probably at least 3 or 4 years. This one we know is 3. So this one might be 4. Might only be 3. Some people are going to say, no, you're wrong because if it doesn't have an age statement, it's got to be at least 4 years old. That's for the United States. That's U.S. law. All right. I know that law. I know that regulation. Canadian whiskey is imported under the regulations of Canada, though, not the United States. I know that much. Read your regulations. Explain the regulations, explain the regulations. Okay. So let's go with the taste. Tastes like fermented and then distilled grains. Not trying to be sarcastic. This is what it tastes like. It tastes like grain, cereal grain, predominantly corn, some rye, some barley malt. You say, what about wheat? It's possible. Possible. You said that sounds like bourbon to me. Bourbon, corn, a lot of corn, some rye, and some wheat, and maybe malted barley. Exactly correct. Canadian whiskey and bourbon is about the same thing, except for one big difference. Bourbon can only be made in the United States. So you can make 2 products identically. Same recipe, same mash bill, you know, same age, both in new charred oak, because some Canadian whiskey does use new charred oak barrels, like Crown Royal Black. But you can't call it bourbon because it's made across that line, an arbitrary line, which the United States and Great Britain sat down at a conference table and drew the line. They negotiated and just drew the line. So let's draw the line all the way across, from the Lake of the Woods to the water. Eventually, it didn't happen in one meeting. They drew it to the Oregon Territory at first, but the Oregon Territory used to stretch from what's British Columbia today, and I think Yukon Territory, all the way down to California. So they said, well, we'll fight about that later because we really haven't explored it yet. You know, we don't know what's out there. So then later, as European people moved out there. Then they started fighting over, fussing over it, not actual fighting in a war, but arguing about it. You had hothead Americans want to have all of it. We want all of it. And same thing, hothead Canadians and British, we want all of it. But sensible people came to the forefront and said, nah, we're not fighting over that. Just keep drawing the line to the water. And then they had some little arguments over some islands out there, but they settled that with no fighting. See, most of these problems can be settled with no fighting. But if fanatics take over, then there's going to be trouble, you see. Like with Palestine, if you got fanatics on either side running the show, you're going to have trouble. It's common sense. If you got level-headed people running the show, you could work it out. You say, but what if only one side has fanatics running the show? Well, you're still not going to work it out because they're not going to compromise. They're not going to, it's all or nothing. They want it all. And a lot of times people that want it all end up with nothing. They could have had half. Okay. Could have had half in 1947. Half. They said we want it all. So you end up with none of it. All right. This one's more grain, like grain spirits. Now I know it's all aged at least 3 years. They don't have any grain neutral spirits in Canadian whiskey. Once it's bottled, everything in that bottle is at least 3 years old. Okay, in the United States, they got a different regulation. You can throw in up to 80% unaged grain. You skip a step. You don't even bother aging it. It's just clear, odorless, colorless liquid. It doesn't look like anything. That's our rule. Their rule is no way. Ain't going to happen. It's got to be aged at least 3 years. So there you go. So anybody I've heard people call Canadian whiskey, that's brown vodka. Total ignorance. Either they're being sarcastic and just mean-spirited, or they're just really ignorant. Ignorant means you don't know. It's not the same as stupidity. Stupidity means even if I explained it to you, you wouldn't understand it. Ignorance means you just don't know enough about it. And I've had people ask me, why don't you do a video about this topic? And I said, I don't know enough about it. In other words, I'm too ignorant to make a competent video. Now, I made World War I video because I felt like I knew enough about it, at least on an elementary level. This one seems to have a fuller, more developed, more complex, more enjoyable flavor. Is it a big difference? No, it's not, honestly. It's kind of like Crown Royal. You could pay $23.99 for a bottle of Crown Royal on sale, or you could pay $19.99 for this one if they'll run a sale, which they do. You save, well, $4, and you're going to lose value. You're not losing anything. I don't see where you're stepping down. You're just not paying for the name. You're not paying for the name. So would this one be just as good as Crown Royal? In my opinion, yes. And if it is inferior, it's so close that it's not worth talking about. And it definitely ain't worth paying for. So, but people are funny about these brands, man. Can't get them off the brand. I don't care what the product is. Could be canned chili. They're stuck on a brand. They're never going to deviate, even if the substitute is just as good, or nearly so, or practically so. All right. So I think this is the Potter's Crown. It's not quite as good, but it's plenty cheaper. Plenty cheaper. So if I was buying a big bottle like this for either one of these, I'd just buy the Potter's Crown and save the $12. Save $12. Why not? Now, if we're talking about regular size bottles, I'd buy the Potter's Crown and save $5 or $5.50, whatever it is. It's going to be cheaper. All right. So, but I think this is the Canadian Peak, and it does win a little sweeter, a little smoother. I got it. So now I'm 1-1. 1 win, 1 loss. And I hope to build on my record, start winning, come out with a winning record. All right. Ooh, that burned. All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. And I'll see y'all tomorrow, God willing, with another Taste Challenge.